Hey, welcome back to That'll Do Garage. Working on the blue Audi again today. Mostly front brakes. Just a reminder, this is my son's car. It's fairly new to us. I did rear brakes already and I crossed my fingers that the front brakes would be okay. Not so much. So let's dig into that and I'll show you what's going on. First I need to point out new wound on the Audi. This was not there a week ago. I'm sure has nothing to do with my son. It probably happened at school. He has nothing to do with it, right? So I'm not gonna bring it up. But anyway, we're chasing front brakes on this car today because, you know, he actually has a warning light on the dash. A lot of Audis and BMWs have a sensor on the front brake pads. And when they get low enough, it'll actually trigger a warning message. So he's got that warning message and then he's got a little bit of pulsation too. And I have this side all blown apart already before I got you guys involved. I'm terribly sorry about that, but I'll show you everything on the other side. Anyway, here's that sensor. And this is usually connected to a brake pad. And you can see it's kind of worn away there. So this sucker's been grinding up against the rotor. And here's what the pads are looking like. Not too bad. Still got a couple millimeters of material there. It's not very straight though, maybe 4 millimeters at the top and 2 millimeters at the bottom. So that one might be wearing funny. And here is our other pad. Kind of the same story there. Definitely ready for replacement. But the first thing I wanted to show you guys on this car, well, I want to tell you a little story. I called the first parts store and I said, hey, I need some pads and rotors for this car. And the guy's like, yep, okay, 65 bucks. And I thought, okay. I call the next parts store and the guy says, yep, okay, I can get your rotors. They'll be here later today, 80 bucks. I said, okay. I call the third parts store, which happens to be another location of the same parts store I called at the beginning. The guy says, what size? I'm like, what do you mean what size? Just give me the rotors for this car. He goes, well, there's 4 different sizes, depending on if it was manufactured in Canada or the US, and so on. So he tells me the numbers, and it was like something like this. It was like 307 millimeters, 312 millimeters, 320 millimeters, and 314 millimeters. You know, they're all within just a couple. So there's no way I can guess. It's not like I can hold up a tape measure on the outside of the wheel and just be like, oh yeah, that's within a millimeter. So I had to rip this side all apart so I could take one off and measure it. But funny story, right? Because what happened at the first 2 parts stores? They just give me a price. There's no options, there's no measuring. So that's kind of weird. But anyway, I thought I'd show you that. This is the rotor I pulled off. And this one, ended up being 12 5/8, which equates to 320 millimeters, which was I think the biggest one. So anyway, this rotor is pretty hosed. You can see all the pitting on here, and this is actually rust where it has like etched into the surface, so it's actually below the surface here as the rust eats away at the metal. So that thing is never gonna, you know, get better. This isn't going to wear away. Eventually it's just going to get worse. He did have a little bit of pulsation, but not too bad. Mostly we're just chasing the brake pad sensor. He didn't like having that light come on every time he started it. So I got this side blown apart, and I'm going to take the other side apart and I'll show you step by step. Shouldn't be anything too special. These are a little bit more complex than the rear, given this big huge caliper mounting bracket and so on, but nothing too exotic. So let's dig into the other side and see how far we get. Okay, get things started here. We're gonna have to remove this Torx screw. Holds the rotor to the hub during initial assembly. Then we have our 2 pads in here. This is all one big piece, which I thought was weird. That's kind of much bigger than usual, but the fundamental mechanics are the same, so no big deal. I'm going to start with trying to pry the caliper towards the rotor, and that will compress the piston back into the caliper, which lets me take it all apart. And then I have one, two, 3, 4 bolts to take out that will let me get the caliper off. And then I have 2 bolts way back here to take the caliper mounting bracket off. And then just a reminder, don't let this hang by the hoses because it's not good for it. So away we go. Okay, very gracefully disassembled that caliper. Pads over there. I think that's the one that had the sensor. It's obviously worn out. Probably laying in here. Yeah, there it is. This one's kind of chewed up too. And these are what the caliper slides are. Slides on. So we're going to clean up and lube all that stuff. I'm going to push this piston back into the caliper. Clean up all of this business. And then the other thing I have to do, these 2 big bolts back here, there's one down below too, down there. Take those off and then I can get the caliper mounting bracket off and then I can get the rotor off. Okay, again, rotor gracefully removed. I'm just Mr. Elegant today. So everything in here looks fine, no surprises. I am going to clean the rust off of this hub a little bit, at least the big chunks, maybe. Because that can screw up the, you know, the rotation of it and how flat the rotor is and so on. But anyway, that's about it. I'm going to start cleaning stuff up. And I gotta head to the parts store and pick up my rotors that should theoretically be the right diameter. How crazy is that, right? Alright, I got a sweet pro tip for you. This might come as a surprise, but I don't always have exactly the right tool for everything I'm doing. And I would assume that most of you watching this are in the same boat. So I wanted to show you something that I use to cut corners and make up for the fact that I don't have $1 million in tools. So these are the bolts that are holding the caliper on, and you can see they're a big Torx head. And I do happen to have a T55, which does fit perfectly. However, let's pretend you don't have that. This is a standard issue Allen hex head, also fits. Notice not quite as tight as the Torx, but it still works, right? Good enough. And also, this is a 5/16 American Freedom units, right? This is definitely a metric bolt given that it's on a German car. But this is a 5/16 Allen that's taken out a T55. So anyway, if you don't have the right tool for the job, sometimes you can do that and swap Torx for Allen. Hopefully one day I'll have some sweet sponsorship deal and then I won't have this problem. I'm talking to you, Harbor Freight. Pro tip number 37, don't forget to match up your stuff. Make sure that you got the right pads from the parts store, because parts stores do make mistakes. See my other video. And this is what the sensor is supposed to look like. You can kind of see how it's embedded in the pad there, and you just plug it in. So those look good. And then we got some new springy dealing-mabobbers here. This is matching up with the old one. Make sure you do it on the hood of your son's car to scratch it, because clearly he's bouncing off of stuff anyway. See the beginning of this video. Looks good. Pro tip number 3 for the day. Make sure you put the right pad in the outside. If you put the wrong pad in the outside, you're gonna bend the little clippies, and then you're not going to want to finish this job. Don't ask me how I know. But the one with the sensor should go on the other side. The one without the sensor should go right here. Again, don't ask me how I know. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, we got 2 little jobs to do here. Remember the sensor for the brake pad. We have to disconnect that up here. And then we're going to compress this piston and add a dab of grease in here. So I guess that's 3 jobs. I'm terribly sorry. I'm a mechanic, not a mathematician. So we're gonna push back on this tab on the very back side. We're gonna push it that way, away from the connector, and then that should let this body come off. And then we're gonna grab this thing. Sorry, we're gonna grab down here and pry that backwards just a little bit, and then we're gonna rotate this 90 degrees, and that should come right out. A video is worth 10,000 words. I'm not sure. You'll see. Just watch. Well, this is pretty much wrapped up. We got the new rotor on, got the new pads in place, big massive spring over here seems to be working properly. Got the brake pad level sensor connected and secured, and all the hardware is tight. So one last thing I like to do on every brake job at the very end is just make sure this whole thing moves, because remember that it's supposed to slide back and forth on those caliper slides. So you want to see just a little bit of movement left to right, and then everything's good. Well, that's about it. She's back on the ground. Hopefully that's the last brake job for this car that I have to do. I assume this will get stuffed in a ditch or something before it needs brakes again. So I'm going to move on to chasing the lingering oil pressure indicator going off. We'll figure that out, but that's about it on this car. And that's going to be it for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video.